Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle DiMarzo, the Curator of Education and Academic Engagement in the Fairfield University Art Museum. Welcome to another virtual edition of Art in Focus, where we're going to be looking at a work that is currently on view in our special exhibition, Streaming, Sculpture by Christy Rupp. The show is up only through April 27th, so if you are watching this and you are close enough to Fairfield, Connecticut, you can visit the exhibition in the Walsh Gallery in the Quick Center for the Performing Arts. It's open Tuesday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., and we have extended hours every Thursday until 8 p.m. So for those of you who might not have visited and have not yet have a sense of the show, our producer is going to drop the URL into the chat right now, so you can visit the exhibition website. I also encourage you, please drop any observations or questions you have into the chat box. Always love to make this a conversation. And unusually for our Art in Focus, we did not have an in-person component today, so I have not come prepared with the observations and questions offered by our museum visitors. So we're just flying on our own today. If you have not seen the show, just to give you a little bit of a sense of orientation, here we are in the lobby of the Quick Center, moving into the Walsh Gallery. You can see just through those glass doors, the entrance to Christie's exhibition. There's the lobby on the other side that I'll come back to right there at the end because I have something to say about the bird that's on that wall. This is the stunning, huge, blown up image of a trash pile that attracts everyone's attention when you walk into the show. Christy's eyes sort of lit up when she saw that big empty white wall when we were planning the exhibition. She knew exactly what she wanted to do, blowing up this stock photo, really, of a pile of single-use plastics to gargantuan scale. I actually rather wish there was someone in this image so you have a sense of exactly how dwarfed you are by this textile, on which she has inserted a number of her small sculptures called petroplankton. And everyone looks at this when you walk in, and it draws you in this very seductive way because it's big and it's colorful, and you're overwhelmed by the size of it. But also it represents in a very real way the scale of the problem that Christy is trying to use her artwork to draw our attention to. And that is, her show is largely focused on the role that plastics play in our environment, in our lives, the inextricable ways that it is contributing to climate change, to the loss of biodiversity, to a whole host of other problems that, quite frankly, they are not pleasant to consider. They're difficult to confront, especially when we might feel a little bit robbed of individual agency in making change. And I think from the perspective of an artist as activist, which is what Christy Rupp sees herself as, one of the ways you can encourage people to be willing to consider the problem is if you give them something sort of visually alluring or seductive to sort of feast their eyes on. You're sliding the message in there at the same time, but you have to draw them in and make them willing to engage, let's say. And we have seen over the course of the semester that all of Christy's work has been incredibly engaging to our visitors, but I watch when people come in, their sightlines go to the left, they go to this huge textile, because you can't not. And then you're sort of overwhelmed by the massive scale of what we see. And all of the plastics in that image, they will be here forever. Plastics are forever. They, with few exceptions, don't degrade, they don't decay. And most of them are not effectively recycled, as greenwashing may make us wish that they were, or hope, or just want to believe blindly that they are. So there's a lot of heavy stuff in Christy's exhibition, but she is, I would say, concealing it in a beautiful package. Almost everything in the exhibition is made from single-use plastics. So plastics that are designed to be used once and tossed away. Some of the plastics in that stock photo are instead things that we use frequently. They're tote bags or, plastic totes, there are lawn chairs, but the actual artworks that she's making, she has collected just thousands of pieces of brightly colored single-use plastics, and she has turned them into artworks. So I will leave it to you to explore some of the other artworks in the show that you can see in our Matterport 3D tour. You can take a video tour on our website. You can come in person. But we're going to look at just the artworks that are on what we call the bird wall. So all of the pieces on this wall come from a particular series from 2017 that she called the Snagged series, but we have also been colloquially referring to in the museum staff as the art history birds. because in this section of the exhibition, she uses her materials of these found objects, these castaway bits of plastic, and she is riffing on famous or depictions of birds from well-known artists throughout history. So it is a little bit of fun to see if you, just from this image, if you want to be the person who can drop into the chat, you think you know already what some of these birds are based on. Obviously, our art and focus is focused on one in particular. Feel free to demonstrate your knowledge by dropping a notation into the chat. We're going to talk about a couple of them, but first, to give you just a sense of scale, there is the artist Christy Rupp on the night of our opening, standing in front of one of the examples from her Snagged series. I did not get a shot of her in front of the one to its right, which is the object that we are going to spend a few minutes looking at together. So this is titled The Goldfinch, after Carel Fabritius, 1654, from the Snagged series. I left the date out, but it's 2017. It is made of plastic net bags, steel, plastic, fish line, and paint. So this bird is just so beautiful to look at. And this is before we even look at its source material, though some of you might already remember or know the painting on which Christy is basing this particular bird. I think I have a detail in there. It's also fascinating what two different photographs, when I was putting the slideshow together, we had one photograph that was taken earlier in the exhibition by a different photographer, and one close-up that was shot later in the exhibition. Two different cameras. The lighting should effectively be the same in our galleries, but do you notice the subtle color difference in the image on the right? How much stronger and more saturated the orange and yellows of its head seem to be. I find that so interesting, that the technology that we use to mediate between ourselves and an artwork can render such a different experience. And of course, you might find a third experience if you went to the galleries yourself and were looking at it with your own eyes. But when we say this is made of plastic netting and fish line, you might be able to imagine if you get a little quart, a little pint of strawberries, the kind of net cap that comes to protect the strawberries from falling out. That's what I envision a lot of this material, this sort of netting of various sizes or gauges that she has rolled and coiled and formed into the body of this goldfinch. You see that it has this wonderful little metal claws that are affixed onto a steel framework. And I should note that Christy does all of her own welding, which I am just incredibly impressed by. So many works in the exhibition are pieces of single-use plastic that are attached to these extraordinary welded frames to turn them into frogs, turtles, a life-size manatee, and many more things that you should definitely check out. So you could be forgiven when you're first looking at this. It's the interest of the bird itself could draw you in. And then, of course, when you are looking at it, thinking about what it is made of, imagining how a real goldfinch might interact with plastic materials like these. In fact, I had just seen in the woods near my house, because it's winter, you could see into some of the denser thickets. And I saw that a bird had actually made part of its nest with just plastic bags that had blown into the woods and become caught. Christy had explained in her opening night talk, which is on our YouTube channel, should you wish to watch it, that we might be tempted to see those things as evidence of sort of a positive adaptation. That yes, humans have sort of infested the landscape with plastic, but maybe there are ways in which animals can learn to live with it. And she kind of cut that rosy-eyed theory off at the knees and said, really, no, in no way is it beneficial for these animals to look at plastic as part of their environment that they have to grapple with. So we have this lovely bird. It's perched. You see around one of its legs, it has a little bit of green wire that is leading to a loop that's going back to, you must recognize that black plastic hook, the kind of thing you would take merchandise off a shelf and it would have that letting it hang off a metal bar. So ubiquitous, so common in our daily life. I can't tell you how many little examples of plastic hooks like that or netting that I probably consumed and tossed away. Certainly, it would never have occurred to me to gather them, sort them by color, and turn them into an artistic representation. But that is Christy's extraordinary level of creativity. And as we said, in the Snagged series, each one of the birds on that wall is inspired in some way by a bird of art history. And I am sure that for those of you who are fans of Donna Tartt, this painting is not a stranger. It served as it was the title of her book, The Goldfinch. This image was on the cover. In fact, the sort of opening event of that book is a young boy stealing this painting from a museum, and that sort of drives the plot over its many, many pages. But this is the inspiration, the artwork itself, which is in The Hague, if anyone is visiting and wants to go see it. Apparently, it has achieved such a level of fame there that it tends to be sort of carefully roped off, much like the Mona Lisa, prohibiting anyone from getting too close, or maybe deciding they're going to take a cue from Donna Tartt's book and see if they can take it home with them. What I love about this is that in the Snag series, that Christy is not reproducing all of the artwork. You'll notice here that in addition to the metal bar, there's a second one underneath. There's this whole wooden box that we can see a hinge and a latch. And it's much more clear when we look at the source painting what is looping the leg of that bird to its perch. She's using a black plastic hook that, of course, could easily be lifted off and removed. But in the original painting, we can see it's a very thin, tiny little loop of brass or bronze. So we're looking at a bird that has been imprisoned, effectively. It's a pet. And I have learned from the website of the Mauritshuis museum that it was quite common to keep goldfinches as pets in the Netherlands this time period. I've even learned that it was possible to train them to do little tricks, like gathering water out of a bowl with a little dipper, which is both amusing and sad, right? To imagine a bird that is intended to be a free flying creature, instead permanently tethered to this post and turned into a little bit of a clown for its owner's amusement. It's a little sad. But what is incredible to me about the representation that Christy gives to her bird, obviously she's given it three-dimensional form. Her brass objects, her steel frame, I should say, stands out off the wall in the Walsh Gallery in a way that Fabritius was only using the image of light and shadow and color to give us the illusion of its doing so. But one of the elements of the painting that is often remarked on is the very beautiful depiction of the wing of the goldfinch. And they remark on the sort of yellow band that we see. So we see the black of the wing, we see the buttery yellow, and then there's a thin line of black where the artist flipped his paintbrush around and used the end to sort of score a line through that yellow paint to reveal black underneath. And it's just perfectly mimicking the appearance of the goldfinch in real life. And you can just make out where Christy is doing the same, but she's working with netting as opposed to working just with paint on a solid surface. So it's just an incredible way of transforming one artist's creativity in the 1650s into 2017, speaking across time. But you could see between them a shared message. And that is, on the one hand, we have the image of the imprisoned bird that should be in its natural environment. And here's Christy making this beautiful bird, which is not permanently tethered. It could easily be lifted off, but it's made of this material that is so harmful to birds in their natural environment that is changing it negatively, even as they may not themselves be sort of technically captured or imprisoned. Now, even though this art in focus was focused on, see what I did there, the goldfinch, and please, if you have any observations or comments on that, feel free to throw them into the chat as we're talking. But I would be remiss if I didn't show you just a couple other favorites from this series, and also explain to you how we came to have a Christy Rupp exhibition at Fairfield at all, which has to do with the bird wall in the streaming exhibition. So this is the piece that you saw Christy standing in front of a few moments ago. It's her parrots after Frida Kahlo, circa 1937, made from the same materials. We have plastic net bags, steel, plastic, fish line, a little bit of paint, now perched on sort of wooden bars, and of course, brilliantly colored to match their inspiration, which is, oops. Sorry about that. There we go. The inspiration is Frida Kahlo's self-portrait, Me and My Parrots from 1941, oil on canvas. And one of the things that's fun for me about this is that here, Christy isn't perfectly mimicking the parrots themselves because there aren't any parrots perching on wood at all in Kahlo's painting. And she has one parrot on each shoulder. She's got two between her crossed arms. I love her cigarette down there very casually at the bottom of the frame. But absolutely, when you look at these, you get this riot of color and life. And although this photograph is looking at them full on, if you visit the gallery, make sure you sort of move around them so you get the full effect of those tiny little beady eyes watching you, much in the same way that by including her four parrots, Kahlo is giving you the birds from almost every angle. At the center of the bird wall, between the parrots on the left and our goldfinch on the right, you'll notice this large figure of a swan. This one is called the Threatened Swan, after Jan Asselijn, also from the Snag series, made with the same materials, kindly lent to us by Joshua Recknitz, a collector of Christie's work. This one, well, here is the inspiration. I should say that first. Another Dutch artist, this one in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. See them side by side, not reproducing any of the surroundings, but really getting that sense of emotion that is coming through. Threatened swan. Something is going after the swan, whether it's a predator or it's human interference, which in the context of Christie's show, again, we can think of plastic itself as a threat to individual animals, to entire species, to the loss of biodiversity. It just works really nicely. But this swan was in no way a stranger to the art museum, because those, well, very few people probably were able to see it in this show, but it was included in a previous exhibition that we had in 2021. It was called Birds of the Northeast, Gulls to Great Auks. It took place in our Bellarmine Hall galleries, and you see the dates at the bottom there. You might be guessing why so few people saw it, even though we kept the museum, we kept our exhibitions open as normal. This really was only accessible to members of the university community because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic at that time. But you're looking at one installation shot, and there is a threatened swan along the back wall. And you'll notice, if you can make out on the label, we included a picture of Jan Asselijn's original painting as a visual reminder for those who might not have been familiar. So this is how we first came to know about Christy and her work. And we were so fascinated by it that we returned to a conversation with her about having a full exhibition of her work at Fairfield. So we're glad after 3 years' time, we're able to have a full display of her work and make it as available as absolutely possible. Marion asks, has Miss Rupp explained where she got the idea for the series of birds based on well-known works of art? She has not explained to me, but I think Christy has a very good sense of humor, especially for someone who works on really such troubling themes and materials. And I think she knows that it is a good balance to be sought between carrying your message and also finding enjoyment and beauty and wit in some of the things that you do. So I think part of it is her enjoyment of these works of art and wanting to transform them into a new media, let's say. But there are other works in the show where she's given things kind of funny titles. So I think it's a good reminder that even though she's dealing with a really heavy subject matter, Christy's very down to earth. She's very wry. She's very funny. And I think that really sort of comes through. So there's our last chance to say anything about our specific bird, about the goldfinch. Of course, we are sure that no one will attempt to snag it off the wall, like happens in Donna Tartt's book. But we're going to be very sad to see it go on April 27th when the show closes. So you do just have a few more weeks to get to the Walsh Gallery to see the exhibition. But I am delighted to say that one piece of Christie's show is going to be staying with us. The artist is discussing donating this piece, the Quetzal, that is hanging in the lobby, to the Fairfield University Art Museum. It also shows you it's another bird. It is not related to art history. It is, however, the national bird of Guatemala. It's perched on a little stick of wood, and its body, rather than made of netting, is entirely made of credit cards and gift cards, other examples of those single-use plastics that so many of them pass through our hands all the time. And in her hands, transformed into this extraordinary bird. You can see how long its tail is, which she has a way of bustling it up. So there's sort of a shortened version of the Quetzal, and then we've displayed it with the full, long, stringing feathers hanging down its back. So it's absolutely lovely. Please make sure to look at that in the lobby of the Walsh Gallery. As I said, the show is up through April 27th. So if you haven't come to see it, please check it out. And you can visit our website that has been dropped into the chat by our producer if you want to take a look at things online or if you're not in the area. So thank you for joining me for Art in Focus on this gray, rainy afternoon. I hope some art history birds have brought a smile to your face, and we will see you for the next Art in Focus.